Hello and welcome to another edition of Planet Waves TV. My name is Eric Francis Coppolino, the host of Planet Waves FM and the author of the Planet Waves weekly horoscope and monthly horoscope, here with a check-in for the Aquarius New Moon, which takes place Feb 11th at 2:05 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I've got a couple of versions of the chart to talk to you about here in this really incredible moment. I'm wearing my purple cross for vaccine safety. That's what that's about. I'm starting it personally. Safe and effective. Question mark. All right. So, first of all, let's jump right in. It's been a while since I spoke to you. There are a lot of topics I haven't brought up, and I'm going to cover some of them today, and I'll have more for you on Planet Waves FM, which goes up on Friday night at 10 p.m. Eastern Time at planetwaves.net. That show is on demand, so the old ones are all there, and the show stays up. But if you want to catch it right after it comes out, I usually aim for 10 on Friday, local time, my time here, Eastern Time, and sometimes I'm early, and every rare now and then I am late. So first topic is Mercury's retrograde right now will be for about another 11 days. And Mercury is retrograde in Aquarius. Aquarius is the sign of groups. It is therefore also the sign of group think. Ever heard of group think? We all know what groups are, the collective and all that. But there's this other thing called group think, which was when a group thinks, and the group thinks in a certain way that goes against the interests of any, many, most, or all people in the group. But the group thinks, and therefore those in the group think they have to think like the group, even to their own detriment, even violating their own principles and precepts and their common sense and their intuition and what their bodies and minds are telling them. And we are in a moment of groupthink that I have never seen before. This to me makes the whole scene during Bush War I and Bush War II seem like a relatively minor event. Of course, was not a minor event for people in Iraq who were bombed for decades, and the American military still has a presence in what was supposed to be this kind of a quick, efficient little war. And that was a case of groupthink, and it was a case of building a false consensus with members of the Cheney-Bush administration, if you remember, one by one, going on every single cable channel and being quoted in every single newspaper saying, Saddam Hussein has weapons of mass destruction. Saddam Hussein has weapons of mass destruction. And that was, I have to say, Bush War II, the one that took place in 2004, was one of a scant few times where I really had to go up against the opinion of the majority of my readership and explain that I was not against wars for political reasons. I'm against wars for spiritual and humanitarian reasons. And I explained that in opposing this war, it has nothing to do with being unpatriotic or not wanting to exact revenge for 9/11. Which we were told Saddam Hussein did. There's no evidence of that whatsoever. In fact, it's bloody well impossible because Sunni and Shia Muslims don't work together. So if you think that Osama bin Laden was involved, I can assure you that Saddam Hussein could not have been involved. Those are mutually exclusive, except for the fact that they were both CIA assets. But that is another story entirely. Maybe we'll come back to that for the anniversary edition of 9/11. Wow, that will be the 20th anniversary. All right, so what's this got to do with today? Well, today we're once again in a moment of consensus building, and a lot of people running along with the consensus. If you take a look at my Facebook timeline, it'll probably be gone when you're seeing this or pushed down. I posted a photo of an aerial view of the Jonestown massacre. Back a few years ago in the 1970s, this cult leader named Jim Jones led his cult to commit suicide. More than 900 people either took their own lives or the lives of their children. There were also some people shot. There was an assassination of a United States congressman. It was a real mess, and it was about the group mind. It was about groupthink. It was about the dear leader. It was about bowing to the authority of the Reverend Jim Jones, who was a widely regarded political leader in San Francisco politics in his day, one of the most powerful political leaders in what was then the place to be a political leader, San Francisco. Now, I bring this all up because we're seeing all of this groupthink go on. All of this, I'm doing it because everyone else is doing it. I'm doing it because it's the right thing to do. I'm doing it to save the community in some way. And very little critical thinking. Not no critical thinking. Not no critical thinking. There is some critical thinking. There are some people asking questions. I happen to know a lot of them. Hi, everyone on the XYZ list, and my friends on CC No Mandates and the Rethinking AIDS Unmasking COVID group. Hi, everyone. Okay, let's talk about astrology and how that looks. Instead of drawing you a chart today, I have drawn all over a chart today. And if you'll notice, most of the solar system is in the sign Aquarius. In fact, all of the traditional planets are in Aquarius, except for Mr. Mars, which is over here in Taurus, and is making a square to a whole bunch of things. There's the new moon, by the way. That's on Thursday. The new moon. See, 23. Both the sun and the moon have the same numerical value, so the sun and the moon form a conjunction. And that is that is the new moon. This here is a point called Damocles. I'll get to that in a second after I finish my groupthink, Mercury Retrograde, the relationship of environment to anti-environment rant. Who knows how long that will take. All right, so all this Aquarius is in the sign of groups is indicative of a lot of groupthink. People thinking the same way. Aquarius is the sign of patterns. Most of those patterns are social patterns. It's also about technological patterns, and the technological patterns intersect with social patterns, particularly in our time, since most of our socialization is taking place on the internet. It's taking place via social media platforms of various different kinds. There's very little going on in the way of people just getting together, hanging out, smoking a bowl, and turning on the guitar amp. If you know anybody, have a guitar case and we'll travel. This is a powerful, powerful influence. There's been no Aquarius like this any time that I could find. The last time that Jupiter and Saturn were together in Aquarius was in 1405. That's a heck of a long time ago. Then we had some event in 1997, not even meekly like this, and then other stuff around 1963 with Saturn in Aquarius. That was not nearly as impressive as all of this is today. And again, just to recap, the personal planets are all in Aquarius, except for Mars, Sun, Moon, Sun, Mercury, and Venus. And then the transpersonal planets are in Aquarius, Jupiter and Saturn. Again, for the first time since 1405, they're together forming a conjunction in Aquarius. Along with the very meaningful asteroid Pallas Athene and Mr. Damocles here. Again, we'll come back to that. Cariclo, I believe the fifth centaur, has now finally moved into Aquarius after making a long, long conjunction with Pluto in Capricorn. All through 2020, those two were conjunct, or at least through most of it. All right, so Aquarius is a sign of groups, sign of groupthinks, the sign of social groupthink, and the sign of social patterns. For those of you who are fans of Alice Bailey, an author I highly recommend, in fact, one of the few astrology authors that I highly recommend after having read most of those books, I'm down to about five 5 books I trust, 5 authors I trust, and the list seems to be growing shorter, not longer. Bailey said something interesting. She said Aquarius is the sign of groups, but the thing is that a group is a collection of individuals who are capable of thinking for themselves. A group is not the crowd at a football stadium. A group is not the audience in a theater. A group is a committee of people who are actually able to think independently, who are therefore somewhat self-actualized or on the path to being so, and nothing else can be called a group. When people get together and they are not individuated, what you end up with is this cult-like mentality. And it is extremely dangerous because people can do very, very stupid things because everyone else is doing it. And that is the excuse that I hear. I walk around on the street and I say to people, so why are you wearing that mask? And I say, mask. And they say, well, everyone else is doing it. Are you planning to get that vaccine? Well, everyone else is doing it, and I'm going to have a lot more to say about that, by the way, on Friday night's Planet Waves FM. So notice the lack of independent thinking. Notice the failure of independent thinking, the refusal of people to think for themselves as if there is no such thing. And notice things like, I'm doing it to protect you. I'm doing it because I bow to Tony Fauci. He's kind of short. Anyway, now that's the environment, right? That's the dominant environment. And we know something about this dominant environment has gotten worse under digital conditions. We know that under the influence of the internet, and with or without social media, but particularly with social media, the whole group thing has gone completely out of control. Now, we should not blame Facebook exclusively for this, though they recently take a lot of the blame. We need to talk about electricity. The effects of all electrical media are tribalizing. They de-individuate people. They assault literacy. They make it very difficult to be a literate person. A literate person is an introspective, inwardly thinking person. When we get into electrical media, suddenly people are blown inside out, and they do, where have I got, oh, here's the thing. They do weird things like collect their memories on this. Instead of looking at it and remembering the feeling, they collect their memories on this kind of a device. And that is external to your mind. Whereas you might have reflected on your memories previously, now you scroll through the thing and you look at your memories. And so the externalization of memory and also of brain function, that is artificial intelligence, the externalization of these things contributes to the de-individuating of people and then further contributes to the tribalizing of people. And this has been going on a long time. The term global village was invented by Marshall McLuhan to describe radio in the 1920s and 1930s and 1940s. And what McLuhan said in one book, I forget which one it was, he said, nobody wants to admit that radio gave us both Gandhi and Hitler. Okay, so we are now in this very pervasive environment that is encouraging groupthink and lack of individuality and tribalism, and people think they're thriving on this. In a way, it feels good to give up the responsibility of personal, individual thought, individual caring, and the understanding that you may be wrong, and that to be an individual, you must have to face the possibility of being wrong. It's a fact of life. And to attempt anything, you have to face the possibility of failing at that thing. And this is very frightening for people, as is exclusion from the group. And this is one of the main things driving the psychology of our time, is that many people who are not working on their self-actualization, who don't necessarily care so much, are terrified of being excluded and being left alone. And in the process of that, we are leaving a lot of people excluded and left alone, dying in care homes, dying in hospital beds, locked in apartments where nobody will come to visit them because they're afraid. This has gone on largely without question for almost an entire year now, and it was hard for a lot of people who had trouble getting through the day, whose social abilities were not a match for the time that we are in, who do not have an interest in socializing online, who might have been able to go out and sit in the park, but now there's nobody out sitting in the park because everyone's afraid to sit in a fucking park with the breeze blowing. And then there are people who rely on people to come to them who are not necessarily showing up, and there's it's a bad scene for a lot of people. And by the way, those who support lockdowns as any kind of a measure to mitigate the spread of a disease, those who support this whole isolation, social separation thing, you want to talk about privilege? You want to talk about being privileged of not being so negatively and adversely impacted by that? You can be sure that those who support those divide and conquer social isolation methods, which are an absolutely bizarre thing to see going on during a time of all this Aquarius, you can be sure they are not that impacted by them. And if they were, they would be begging for human contact and human company. And I just want to put this up again to show you the scale of this issue. Look at this string of planets in Aquarius. I don't know when this has ever been like this before. I'm sure I've got some resources to check it out. Probably Neil Mickelson has done some calculations of when this happened. But it is an extraordinarily rare event, and it is obviously even rarer to have it happen in one sign. And we know that in Aquarius has not happened since the dawn of the Renaissance. And who knows, maybe we are at the dawn of a renaissance. Okay, so now let's talk about Mercury retrograde. As of today, right now, and as of the new moon, Mercury is retrograde. It's actually not quite all the way back to 1616. It is at that degree when the new moon happens tomorrow. Mercury retrograde is the thing that's going against all of this tide. Mercury is the only planet retrograde, I believe the only planet retrograde right now. Let's see, what Vesta's retrograde, the lunar nodes are retrograde. Oh, there you go. So apart from Vesta, Mercury is the only planet retrograde right now, and it's retrograde right in the mix of all this groupthink. That sounds like questioning. That sounds like going anti-environment, going against the prevailing trend in the dominant environment. It sounds like subverting the dominant paradigm. Anyone in New Paltz remember that graffiti that appeared one day? Somebody made a stencil that said, "Subvert the dominant paradigm," and they sprayed it on every wall, surface, construction fence, and whatever billboard in New Paltz. This is sometime in the 1990s. Subvert the dominant paradigm. If you have a picture of that, please send it. Would be worth making another one of those stencils. It was really cool. So Mercury retrograde in Aquarius is here to subvert the dominant paradigm. It is here to ask questions. Mercury will do this in a tricksterish way. The people who are making any progress right now are the ones with a sense of humor. They're the ones who are a little bit tricksterish. They're the ones who are not afraid to be wrong. They're not afraid to be told they're wrong. They're not afraid to go against the group. Who does that leave? Not that many people. I hope you're one of them who's willing to not have your life defined by the larger public life, not have your choices defined by the larger public choices. And so Mercury is doing this retrograde run, and it's really quite an impressive thing. Mercury is going to be retrograde about 11 more days from when I'm talking. And it is going to station direct right in the midpoint of Jupiter and Saturn, and I think that's on the 20th. And so we really have Mercury covering the waterfront and asking, we're potentially asking the difficult questions. I will tell you, as someone who's done this my whole life, as the little kid who blurted out in church, they're drinking blood. Why are they drinking blood? Or who asked, when Jesus went to heaven, did he shoot up like a rocket or float up like a balloon? The adults really couldn't answer these questions. I once asked my mom as a very young child, I might have been about 6, what the Holy Spirit was. And Mom said, I don't know, why don't you call up some priests? And I didn't really know how to use the phone, so she started calling priests up for me. And I think so began my journalism career with the first journalistic question that I put to authority figures, what's the Holy Spirit? And the best answer we could get was tongues of flame. Now, slight digression. The entire Christian faith is based on the existence of the Holy Spirit. There's no difference between Christianity and any other religion except for that one thing that Jesus did. It's not that he died and resurrected. It's that he called forth, made us aware of the internal connection point to God. And it turned out that no priest could actually explain this very simple, most elemental arithmetic of Christian theology. When you ask questions, one of the things you find out is that the experts are generally a bunch of dumbasses, and they don't know. And if you ask 100 experts, which is what you get to do as a journalist, you keep asking 100 experts the same question, it's not long before you know more than almost all of them. And so this is the spirit of Mercury retrograde in Aquarius, with all these other planets in Aquarius and the Jupiter-Saturn conjunction in Aquarius. The thing with Jupiter and Saturn is these are big authority figures. They are mostly what we recognize as authority. Jupiter in Aquarius, the big expert, the scientist, the guy wearing the lab coat. I'm sorry, I don't have my beaker on the table. The guy, here, I'll just use some tea. The guy with the beaker who never gets it wrong but also never performs an actual experiment. This is a lot to challenge, and if you'll notice, I'm seeing this Venus conjunct Jupiter as the love affair with the presumed scientific authority. Now, if you've been following my work the past year, one thing you're likely to have learned is that the presumed scientific authority doesn't really have very much scientific basis for what they are saying. The COVID vaccine is not a vaccine. It is a gene therapy device that turns your body into an antigen-producing thing. It turns your body into a thing that doesn't make immunity to a virus that's injected into you, if you believe that theory. No, it turns your body into the thing that makes the bad thing in the virus that your immune system then attacks. That is to say, this mRNA vaccine is designed to turn every cell in your body, by morphing the genetic code, into a thing that produces the spike protein in the supposed presumed unisolated, no samples thereof, in silico coronavirus, but they know what the spike proteins are, and because they're general, and then it will make your body make those coronavirus proteins, which your immune system then attacking your own cells. In other words, it induces not an immune response. That's what a vaccine is supposed to do. It induces an autoimmune response. It is the world's first mass-produced, mass-inoculated autoimmune device being given to millions of people today as we speak, and they are lining up for the privilege of it. They are tweeting it. They are adding their Facebook thing, their frame around their photo saying, I got the shot and all this stuff. Do they know that their body is being turned into a thing that is designed to make coronavirus spike proteins in every cell? Every cell. Your fingers, your nose, your toes, your boobie, your balls, your dick, not your hair follicles, your eardrums, your blood cells, your bone marrow. Any cell generally can take that in. And because it's injected into muscle, the blood cannot filter it. Okay, so, oh, and it can pass the blood-brain barrier. There are a lot of problems here, but who is asking questions? Well, I would encourage you to ask questions and do your due diligence. My keyword, my key phrase for Mercury in Aquarius is know when you don't know. My key phrase for do your due diligence for Mercury retrograde in Aquarius could be something like do your due diligence. This is not about worshiping authority figures. This is about questioning authority figures and asking them how they know what they say they know. But you will notice this is not going on. And mostly, somewhat is. You see like 1 out of 20 comments. Someone says, excuse me, this is not what's going on. Check out what's going on Steve Forrest's webpage, my esteemed colleague, and my most esteemed colleague, Rob Brezhny. I'm going to have a lot to say about those guys and their COVID cult on Planet Waves FM. I'm going to take them on. I do not take on other astrologers on the issue of astrology, if you've noticed. But I will happily take them on issues of scientific fraud and informed consent. And so Mercury retrograde in Aquarius is due diligence. Do your diligence. You are responsible for what is put in your body and for what cannot come out. You are responsible for what you put in your children's body and cannot come out of your children's beautiful original biology. Okay, what else going on here? Let's cover two last points. I'm kind of lost track of time a little bit, but I think I've got about 5 minutes left in my half-hour approximate budget. All right, 3 items. I did want to mention Damocles. I can't believe I have not mentioned this. Damocles is this weird thing with like a 20-year orbit, but it spends like 14 of the 20 years in Aquarius. So it's a thing that's almost always in Aquarius. So it's got this super long, elongated orbit, and that elongation happens in the direction of tropical Aquarius and sidereal Capricorn. Like it's always out in that direction like a comet, except when it comes in and it whips through the zodiac. Damocles is the story approximately of a servant who envied his king and wanted to be the king and wanted to be just like the king, and the king said, all right, you can be the king for a day. And when the servant got there and sat down on the throne, he realized that there was a sword hanging above the king's head. I guess the servant was Damocles. The sword hanging above the king's head by a single thread of horsehair that could fall and split the king's head open at any time. Maybe it's not such a cool thing to be king. And so that is one of the lessons of Damocles, and the general feeling of Damocles is the feeling of, oh my God, there is a lot at stake. And it could be all over any second, and it doesn't matter if I get it right or if I get it wrong. And so there's that sense of life hanging by a thread. Mercury retrograde began 9 days ago in an exact conjunction with Damocles. Thing 2 in my quick astrology wrap-up. For the new moon, Chiron is in an exact sextile with Saturn. Maybe it fell off when I enlarged my copy, but you can see here is Chiron at 623, and then this blue line makes a 60-degree angle, a sextile to 633. That's very close. That's an aspect of 1/6 of 1 degree. 1/6 of a degree. That's not very much. That is a nice exact sextile. And I don't think it's coming back. I don't think Saturn retrogrades that far back, but I haven't checked that lately. Okay, so Saturn sextile Chiron is a fantastic aspect. That is an aspect of real traction. That is about being able to deal constructively with limitations and to use limitation as a way of being constructive. So you don't want to be flying all over the place. You want to contain your efforts, focus on something, and in a sense, I think if this means anything to you, use Chiron as the key to all this Aquarius, because Saturn in Aquarius is the king of all this activity in Aquarius, taking up the lead here at 6 degrees and 33 minutes as of tomorrow. And Chiron has the key, see the little key, to the door that Saturn is, and can therefore unlock the potential through focus, through demonstrating the grounding quality of Chiron expressed in its Saturnian expression. Chiron can go the way of Uranus. Chiron can go the way of Saturn. Right now, we have Chiron making close contact with Saturn, and this is saying, focus yourself, get the most important thing done that you need to get done. Okay, one last point. It's not shown in this chart, but we're heading into a Venus-Mars square. If you've read my book, Astrology Revealed, which you can get complimentary if you get a subscription to Planet Waves, I did a study in the Venus-Mars square in this book. What I wanted to do was I wanted to pick one aspect and take all these books and find the ones that talk about aspects, and then down in the Planet Waves office, where I don't usually work, I usually work in my apartment up here, is another collection of books, even better. And there's even some back in the bedroom where Lanvi stays when she's here. And we've got a lot of books. And so I went through and looked up about 12 versions of Venus square Mars. And it was ugly. And it was all about all kinds of conflict and destructive behaviors and destructive emotional behaviors. But no one said that, no one made the main comment that you would make with Venus square Mars, which is, this is about integrating the masculine and the feminine. We do a lot of projecting the masculine and the feminine. We pretend we're integrating the masculine and the feminine. Right next door to me there is the LGBTQ Center, and we think that by smashing all those letters onto a sign, we are integrating something. My friend Chris McGregor suggested a couple of years ago that they change it to the LGBTQE Center. Since I have my own sexual orientation, I should get onto the sign outside the front door. But your name should also be on the sign outside the front door, because every person has a different sexual orientation and gender orientation, and I don't mean identity. And so apart from all the mean, evil things that you'll read about people in natal chart interpretations with Venus square Mars, there's that little thing about working the dichotomy between the inner masculine and the inner feminine, and working one side and the other side and one side and the other side, and then finally slowly bringing them together into a kind of a conjunction, spiritually speaking, to be able to integrate these two seeming opposites. And so that is the message of Venus square Mars. I will probably do a whole article about that, since it's so interesting and so much fun. Maybe a version of Tantra Studio. Please check the new Planet Waves website. The weekly horoscope is up. There's a new article on the Aquarius New Moon. There's a fabulous new Planet Waves FM that went up last week. I broke international news last week on Planet Waves FM with an interview with a guy named Steven Bustin. We've added the transcript today. Thank you, Joshua Hallinan, for completing the transcript. And that's all I have to say. Please push the subscribe button. Please share this. Please, if you are of the means to do so, subscribe to Planet Waves like real subscription, or make a donation to Planet Waves TV. That is how I pay all of these good and wonderful people to do all of this good and wonderful work, without whom it would be impossible for me to show up here and every place else when I do. Thanks for watching. Remember, vaccine safety and efficacy, it's not a myth. There have to be studies. Studies should be long-term. Read some books about this. Read a book called The Virus and the Vaccine. The Virus and the Vaccine. Okay. Love you dearly. Bye for now.